Hello, I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this video tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can create a sort of collage effect, which is going to look like we have a photograph that was painted or printed on a piece of cardboard and which has since been damaged and distressed. Before we get started with this tutorial, let's have a look and see what it is that we're trying to achieve. What we're going to do is to take a photo of a piece of cardboard and a photo of a building of some sort and put the two together so that it realistically looks as if the image may have originally been printed on or perhaps painted onto the cardboard. This is one of the results that I have, and this is the other, and we're going to create actually this one because this one has a slightly more difficult piece of cardboard to work with, and if you can do this, you can do this one very, very easily. So let's get started. The images that I'm using are from free images. This used to be sxc.hu and it's now free images. So if you go there and look up beach house, you'll find this beach house image. And if you go there and look up torn cardboard, you'll find this image here. So you'll want to go and register on the site and download these because they're both free photos. And if you want to follow along, that's where the images came from. So I'm going to go and reopen these images. So let's go and get the cardboard and the little house. So this house needs to be straightened because I want it to go straight onto this piece of cardboard. So in Photoshop, I'm going to select the ruler tool here and then just drag over the line that I want to straighten to. Now in earlier versions of Photoshop that didn't have this straighten layer option, once you've used the ruler tool, you would go to image and then image rotation and then arbitrary and just click OK and it will be rotated automatically. In more recent versions of Photoshop, just click straighten layer and then it will straighten automatically for you. If you don't have both images available or visible side by side, you'll go to select all to select all of this image and do edit copy. And then you can just get rid of that image. And with this image targeted, you're just going to choose edit paste and that pastes it in. Now the photo here that we just pasted in is much bigger than the piece of cardboard. So let's just get the image where we can see it, and I'm going to press Ctrl T to show the transform handles and then Ctrl 0 to resize the image so I can see those handles. And now holding the Shift key so I don't knock this little image out of alignment, I'm just going to resize it and place it approximately where I want it on the box. Now I'm aware that there is a line of torn cardboard along here and I want the top of the house here to be sort of along the edge there because I want to knock that out with the effect that I'm creating. So this is a pretty good size, so I'm just going to click the confirm option there and now let's just zoom back in. And let's view the layers palette with window layers because this is where all the action is taking place. So that I can edit this layer without destroying it so I can get it back later on if I want to, I'm just going to click the layer and click here on add layer mask because I want a layer mask that I can start working with. But I also want to get this torn paper line. So let's just hide everything here for now and let's look at this torn paper line. I'm going to select the lasso tool here because it's probably the easiest tool to use, and I'm just going to reasonably carefully select over the line here, and what I want to do is to get an impression of where this torn edge is. So I'm just making a reasonable selection across here. And when I get up to the edge here, I'm just going to make a really big selection around because I want to select the whole of the rest of the image. So this is now my selection. And this is the edge that I want to cut to, but you can see it's torn cardboard, so it's going to be a little bit feathered. So I'm going to feather the edge, but if I feather the edge, I'm going to bring in the edges here. So let's invert this first. I'm going to choose select and then inverse. And that's going to select the top part of this image. And now let's feather it with select, modify, feather. And how much of a feather you use is going to be determined by how big your image is. And this image isn't very big at all. So I'm thinking something like a 10 pixel feather is probably going to be sufficient. On a really high res image, you want to be much bigger with your feather. And of course, it's also going to depend on how the tear is in your cardboard. So I'm just going to click OK. And now I want to use this to crop this image, and because I want to get rid of this part of the image, I want to fill it with black. So let's just make black and white our foreground and background colors, target the layer, and because black is my foreground color, I'm going to press Alt Backspace Option Delete to just remove that portion of the photo. And now I can deselect my selection with Control D or Select Deselect. And this has given me a reasonably good edge here. It needs fine tuning, but we're already part of the way towards creating the effect that we're looking for. The next part is to alter the mask or paint on the mask to make these edges much less defined. I'm going to target the brush tool, and let's go and find a brush, and I want a round brush and a soft one. So this is a soft round brush that's perfect for my needs. It's got 0 hardness. I'm not really worried about its size, so I'm just going to click away from this here. I'm going to make sure my opacity is 100%. Now my brush size is very small, so I'm going to use the square bracket keys to just make it larger. And because it's a nice soft brush and I'm painting here on my mask, because I've got the mask targeted and painting in black, I'm just going to run down the edges here, and this is bringing the edges much softer, so that again we're reinforcing the idea that this image was actually painted on or printed onto this box. So I'm going to go for some sort of reasonable edges here. Now the concern I have is that I'm not sure that realistically I've got this torn edge, so I'm going to work on that. But before I do, I think I just need to come in here and get a bit of this back, so I was a bit too anxious to get that out. Switch colors just with the X key, and then I can soften this again. So let's zoom in here with the zoom tool, and using the spacebar as I drag with the hand tool, I'm going back to my brush. This time I'm going to set it to quite hard, in fact probably 100% hardness, and shrink it right down in size. Now as a hard brush, it's going to work really fine in here. As soon as I hit a pixel, that pixel's going to go. There's no feather here at all. And I want to do that along this torn edge because I don't want a lot of feathering. If I need to, I can press X to reverse my colors, but I will also want to make sure that if I do that, I take down the opacity of the brush or soften the brush, and I didn't do that, so let's just knock down the opacity here right down on this brush to bring a little bit of detail back in here. Switch colors again, go back to a 100% opacity, and just come along here and try and pull these pieces of the image out, particularly where this black detail is, although we're going to have another shot at that black detail in a minute, so definitely don't want it round there. Okay, now let's zoom out with Control 0. What I need to do next is to blend this image in because it's looking way too perfect for the box that it's on. So if you've got a really good mask so far, let's just duplicate this layer and let's add a brand new layer on top. So I've got a brand new empty layer, a duplicate of my image so far, and I'm just going to turn this version off so that I can now just merge these two together. So I'm going to click on this top empty layer and press Control or Command E, and I'm asked if I want to apply the mask or not, and I do. So I'm just going to click Apply. And what that does is it applies the mask to the image, so the image is now cut down by that mask. I'm just going to press Control 0 to go out. Now let's turn all of that off, and let's go and grab a duplicate of this background layer. So I'm just going to grab that, and let's just move it to the top so that we can focus on it. I want to convert this to a black and white image and just desaturate it. So I'm going to choose Image Adjustments and then Desaturate. And now I want to bring up the detail in it. So I want to make the black areas blacker and the white areas whiter, and the levels tool is a really good tool to use for that. So with the layer still selected, image, adjustments, levels. And now if I drag over here, this is making the blacks much blacker. And if I start dragging in from this side, it's going to make the whites much whiter. And so I'm getting a really contrasty version of the image. And that's exactly what I want. So I'm just going to click OK. And then I'm going to hide this. And I'm going to bring back visibility on the image that we're working with. And I'm going to add a new layer mask to this layer. Well, I dropped it on the wrong layer, so I'm just moving it. But click on this layer and add your new layer mask. Now I want to put this in here. And one of the easiest ways of doing that is with apply image. So I'm going to select my mask and I'm going to choose image and then apply image. And what this is asking me for is, the source is this image that I downloaded from freeimages.com, and it wants me to tell it which layer I want for the mask. And the layer that I want for the mask is this background copy. So I'm going to make sure that background copy is selected. Usually leave channel at RGB, and then I can look at my blending and also at my invert option. So sometimes inverting the mask is actually giving you the results that you want. And for me, I don't want to invert my mask, but you want to check that to see how it looks. And if I want to blend, I can blend, but you know, this has pretty much done what I wanted it to do. I've managed to remove pieces of this photo in the darker areas of the image where the creases are. So I'm sort of blending it in a little bit. So I'm just going to click OK to say, yep, that's exactly what I want. Now, if it's too much, I could come back in here and adjust this mask, because a mask can be adjusted just like an image. So with its targeted, I could choose image adjustments, levels. And I could go back in here and say, okay, which areas of the image do I want to affect? So I can drag here on my levels adjustment, and what I'm doing now is making everything a bit lighter so that the mask is having a lot less effect. And if I drag the other way, I'm making everything darker, and so the mask is having a much more severe effect on the image. And somewhere in there is my happy spot. So if your grayscale image, when it's applied as a mask, isn't giving you the results that you want, come in here and just adjust the levels on the mask itself. So I'll just click OK. And finally, before I finish up with this, I might be looking at this and saying, well, you know, in old photography, one of the things that happened was that certain colors disappeared or disintegrated before other colors did. And what if I wanted to play down this green background? Well, I can do that with blend if. I'm going to target this layer, which right now has my image on it. And I'm going to click on the FX icon, the add layer style icon here, and go to blending options. And these blending options down here with blend if lets me target a color in the image or just the luminosity in the image and blend it using that. So these areas here are green. So I'm going to target the green channel, and they're dark green, not light green. So I'm going to drag in on this slider, because this says anywhere where this layer, the house layer, is dark green, I want to see through it to the layer underneath, which is of course our cardboard box. Now this is a sort of all or nothing adjustment right now, because it's not very subtle. The transition is not very subtle, but if I hold the Alt or Option key, I can drag half the slider away, and so I can start making a bit more of a transition between the areas where I'm removing the green in the image and the areas where it's not being removed. And so I'm just going to pick a transition point here that's going to work for me, but I want to remove some of that dark green from the image. And you could also do that with other channels. So you could say, okay, well, there's blue sky here and quite a bit of light blue sky. I might want to remove that. Well, it's actually going to be hard to target the blue sky because it is blue in the building here. So we won't actually be able to do that. But we can with the greens, of course. So I'm just going to click OK. If I wanted to get rid of some of the blue here, I would need to actually paint on this mask. So there we have an image that looks as if it's been painted onto a piece of cardboard and distressed. There are lots of techniques here that you've seen and that you can work with yourself. The ability to create masks to distress this, to get some detail from the underlying image. You've looked at the blend-if sliders, you've looked at using brushes to paint on the mask to remove various areas, and you could also adjust down the opacity of this layer, so you could take the opacity down to blend it in a bit more. And you may also want to look at some of the blend modes, which would alter the image somewhat in terms of how it is blended with the cardboard box below. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. Look out for more video tutorials here on my YouTube channel, and consider subscribing to my channel and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. And visit my website at projectwoman.com, where you'll find more tips, tricks and tutorials on a range of applications including Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator and a whole lot more.